Hello, everyone. We'll give it just a moment before we get started. All right.
Just want to say hi to my friends.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're just going to give it another minute before we get started. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for this afternoon, Erin Riggs, and we'll be talking to several members of the ClinGen team or past ClinGen team about some of their stepping stone opportunities.
All right, thank you. Let me get my screen shared here. You'll let me know when you see that, please. Oops, wrong button.
We can see your screen now.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so as Jules said, welcome to our final installment of the 2022 ClinGen Clinical Genomics Career Panel Series. And the focus of this particular panel is on stepping stone opportunities. So just as a reminder, we did already have several other installments of this series, genetic counselors, clinical laboratory careers, physicians, research development, other opportunities, and recordings of those are all available on our website, and at the end of the call, I will show you where to find those. But really quickly before we begin, just in case anyone's not familiar with what we mean when we say stepping stone opportunity, these are really roles that help individuals gain experience and knowledge before further education and jobs. And they can include, but they are of course not limited to, things like genetic counseling assistants, biocurators, program analysts, etc. And before we get into that, I do have a few quick poll questions for you, just so that our panelists know who is joining us on the call today. So the first question is just, as of September 2022, will you be a student? And you can indicate what type of student you will be there, or if you're not, just say no. And the second question is, how familiar are you with these types of stepping stone opportunities? Not very, slightly, moderately, very, or extremely. So I'll give people a moment to fill that out. And Jules, whenever it looks like a good number of people have filled it out, you can go ahead and close those. Okay, so today joining us on the call, most people on the call today are not going to be a student as of the fall, but we do have at least one person who is going into a PhD program and two people that are undergraduates. And then we have a good mix of familiarity with these particular opportunities. We have some people, about half the call is moderately familiar with them, but the other half are just slightly or maybe not familiar at all. So it'll be a good learning experience for everyone. All right, so the way this is going to work, we have 4 panelists joining us today. In a moment, I will stop sharing my screen and then I will turn it over to them. I will ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves and tell us things like, where are you currently working? What do you do? Or if you're in school, what kind of program this is? And then what you did before you got to the point you're on now. I believe everyone on our panel today has moved on from their stepping stone opportunity. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, but what you did to get there. So I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Liana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leanna Paul, and I just very recently left my stepping stone opportunity. So I was a genetic counseling assistant at Geisinger Health System, and I had a split role between their Autism and Developmental Medicine Institute and also working with ClinGen. And now I have moved on to a genetic counseling program at Vanderbilt. So excited to start that next month.
All right, thank you. Hannah?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah McCurry. Until recently, I was a ClinGen staff biocurator at the Broad Institute in Cambridge. I have some experience interning with ClinGen as well. Currently, I'm on a bit of a summer break until starting my PhD program at UC Davis in the fall.
Excellent. And Natalie?
Hi, everyone. It's great to have you all here. So I'm currently a medical student. It's my second year, starting in August at the University of Pittsburgh. And I worked as a program analyst at the National Human Genome Research Institute. One of the programs that I worked on was the Clinical Genome Resource. Some of the other programs included the Ethical, Legal, and Social Implications Research Program and the Phenotypes and Exposures Toolkit.
All right, and Becky.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Rebecca or Becky. I am currently a cardiac nurse at the Beth Israel Institute in Boston. But before switching careers to nursing, I was a gene and variant biocurator with ClinGen, originally through partners, but then over at the Broad Institute.
All right, thank you. So as you guys can tell, all of these wonderful people have worked with us at ClinGen, where I'm personally so excited to see you all. Haven't seen some of you in a long time, have seen some of you recently, but I'm excited to speak to you today. So for the audience, if you have any questions that you would like to ask our panelists, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and I will read them out as they come in. But I'll start us off just by asking everyone if they wouldn't mind just saying, how did you hear about this particular stepping stone opportunity? Because for at least a lot of these things, I had not heard of them before recently. So I'm guessing other people may be in the same boat. So if you could share how you heard about these things, that would be great.
I'm happy to share first. I kind of stumbled into this role just after college. I was kind of searching for some like lab experience, and at the time was looking kind of through what was Partners, now is Mass General Brigham, but I was kind of looking through their career site and saw a lab that was set up with Heidi Rem over at Partners, kind of applied through there and found my way into this ClinGen world through that.
I would say when I started looking into how to get into genetic counseling programs, I saw that genetic counseling assistants were kind of on the rise, and in some ways it was becoming a little bit more of the norm to have a position like that before applying. So I kind of knew what to look for, and then from there I found it on a job posting site, and then also had heard from others that the position was open.
So I learned of the position again through interning with ClinGen. Becky was actually one of my mentors in my internship, so I learned about this full-time position through her. And getting into that internship again, it was, like others have said, kind of searching for opportunities like that. I wanted something to do with my summers and had stumbled across ClinGen accepting undergrad summer interns. So I kind of threw my resume out there and was super lucky that it stuck and I got this great opportunity. So it was great to learn about it through interning, even while still an undergrad.
So I found my position through a school job portal called Handshake. I don't know if that gave me any sort of advantage over a regular job portal. I wonder if maybe because of the affiliation through the school, my application was like flagged in some way. But I will say the NHGRI's program analyst position is very much meant to be a stepping stone opportunity. They look for undergraduates who are looking to go to medical school or grad school or do anything else in the future. Other institutes at the NIH sometimes take program analysts at the master's level, and so it's less of a stepping stone, more of a career. But I think if you're interested, there might be other institutes with a similar program analyst program to the NHGRIs.
All right, thank you. And maybe just really quickly, if each of you would comment on how long you remained in the stepping stone career, just to give people an idea.
I would say for about 2 years.
And that's probably true for each of you, right? If I remember correctly. Okay.
I did 3 years,
Okay.
which was abnormal for the position. It was meant to be 2, and I stayed an extra year.
But that was okay. And well, I mean, but I think that's a good point too. I can say at least for the stepping stone opportunities, we have guys here like genetic counseling assistants. We do not mind if you would like to stay with us longer, because we develop a relationship with you over time, and you know the project and you know what needs to be done. We very much appreciate you. So, and that's probably true in many of these types of opportunities, even though maybe on paper they're supposed to be for a limited time. I don't think there's any downfall if you need to stay. Nobody's going to kick you out necessarily. So next question, did you have a specific career goal in mind? Like, did you already know when you started this, this is what I want to do with my life, I'm planning this intentionally? Or did you really use the stepping stone opportunity as a jumping off point to explore some options maybe you weren't sure? If people want to comment on that.
I already mentioned this a little bit, that I kind of came in mostly certain that I wanted to go the genetic counselor route, but I did see this opportunity as a way to explore that before committing to any school program. So I would say with stepping stones, it's a place to explore. I was also considering just doing like straight mental health counseling, but through the stepping stone, I found that I would have missed that hard science piece. So it really helped to solidify that I wanted to move forward with the career path. And then it also gave me some insights into specific specialties in genetics that I might be interested in the future.
So I had no idea what I wanted to do when I started my stepping stone opportunity. I actually graduated in 2020, so right in the midst of the pandemic. And it was such an amazing place to spend some time figuring out what my next step would be. And I would definitely recommend it to anyone who might not know what the next step would be. It's completely okay if that's the case. And these stepping stone opportunities are so helpful to kind of give yourself some time to figure out what's next, while also doing something to give you more experience, learn new things. It doesn't need to be exactly in the field that you want to go into. For example, my PhD program is in plant genetics, so a little bit different from clinical genetics. So again, just any stepping stone opportunity you might find yourself in, you can take those experiences and everything you learned and apply them wherever you might end up going.
Now, before anyone else answers, I did just want to expand on something you said. So would you mind just sharing with us, like, what led you to plant genetics? Was it something you didn't like about clinical, or just your thoughts on that? I'm sure people will be interested in it.
Sure. So I did plant genetics in undergrad, so my last year of undergrad. So I had that experience. And again, I had the clinical genetics experience from interning as well. And I really, really enjoyed both of them. So that's factors in a lot to why I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I loved interning with ClinGen. I loved working full time with ClinGen. There is nothing that I didn't like. I just recognized that I really missed working in the wet lab as opposed to some of the more dry lab things that happen in ClinGen. So it was really that driving, desire to be back in the wet lab, working directly with plants specifically, that made me pursue my PhD, going towards plant genetics again.
Great perspective. Natalie or Becky, did you want to add anything into that?
Yeah, so I originally went into like this working with ClinGen opportunity, like thinking that I wanted to be in a research role and using that as like a, kind of stepping stone to like what other kind of research that I could do career-wise afterwards, because I kind of had no idea what I wanted to do at that point. And then like through ClinGen, I was able to spend a lot of time discussing, you know, all these clinical genetic things with like physicians, other researchers, and a lot of people that I could like reach out to and kind of pick their brains about their career. And then that kind of made me realize that I wanted maybe not so much to be in like a research role, but maybe more in a clinical setting. So that kind of guided my decision towards going towards nursing.
Yeah, I'll just say that I did pre-med in undergrad, but wasn't sure that I wanted to do medicine. I kind of did it as a backup in case I decided I wanted to. So I think my stepping stone, I definitely chose thinking I would probably go into the health field, but as people have said, you get exposed to a lot of different careers and you kind of have the time to decide what it is that you really want to do. And for medical school, it gave me the time to prepare my application by doing things like taking the MCAT, getting volunteer hours and all that.
Okay, great. And I'll just remind the audience, you know, if you hear something that piques your interest, you want to learn more about it, please don't hesitate to put your questions in the Q&A. I've got a whole list of questions here, so we're okay. But if you have something you want to hear about, don't hesitate to let us know. So next, I'll move on and ask you guys, what did you like the best about your stepping stone position?
It's a hard question to answer because there's a lot of things I liked about it. But I feel like I got so much like education out of this job. Like it wasn't just, you know, coming into the office, doing work and going home. Like I felt like I was growing and like learning a lot along the way. And was able to like talk to so many different people. I know we've already said this, but able to talk to so many different people in different career fields, experts on different you know, different things clinically. And I just felt like I, you know, grew so much in knowledge and like through the exposure that I was able to get through this job.
I will definitely second what Becky said, especially that it's so hard to choose from all the great things that I can take away from this job. But I think what I really enjoyed is all the opportunities that were given to kind of us young professionals. For example, I have the opportunity to be a lead author on a publication coming up soon. That's something I didn't think I would have the opportunity to do until like 6 years down the line on the other side of a PhD program or anything. But working so closely with ClinGen groups and so closely with clinicians and such, and kind of leading those efforts is a lot of, you know, responsibility. And it's great to have been given that and learn the skills and techniques that comes along with that. And, you know, also on the other end, have this really great opportunity to publish some of the work that I was so heavily involved in. It's really great.
I will just jump in and say something that I found really fun about working at the NHGRI is that, well, even the NIH in general, you get to meet a lot of like celebrities in science. So when I worked with the Ethical, Legal, Social Implications program, I met someone who now, when I was doing city training for like human subjects research, the author was somebody that I had met and like had dinner with at some point with like a bunch of different researchers. So that's really fun. And it's not necessarily like a connection that you make where you can reach out to the person and be like, hey, I'm looking for a job in the future. But it's the kind of thing where like you kind of you collect role models of like people in the field that you're like, I love this person and what they do. Like, what can I learn from them? How can I do what they do?
I would say everyone covered all of the points that I had, so maybe I'll just comment on them a little bit further. ClinGen's a very busy place, so I really liked having a bunch of different tasks to do because I felt like I was learning and kind of exercising my brain in a lot of ways, but also keeping fresh. I also liked that I was connecting with so many people and on so many different projects. And I really feel like in stepping stone opportunities, you can kind of express your interests and then you'll be given opportunities to pursue those if possible, which I think is great. And then the final thing I wanted to say that it was great to have a kind of safety net for new things that I was doing. So it was a very safe and supportive environment when I was putting myself out there and learning things that I hadn't done before.
Awesome. And then lest you in the audience think this is like a paid ad for ClinGen, it's not. We are not making them say this. I will now ask you what you did not like about your stepping stone opportunity. So please feel free to be honest.
I don't know if I have any takeaway that I didn't like. Maybe just the fact that it didn't end up being directly the field, career field that I went into. So wasn't what I was meant to do for, the rest of my career. But, I know it's not a paid ad, but I really have nothing bad to say about my time there.
I had a great time. I'd do it again every time.
Yay, you guys are just making us feel so good about ourselves. Hannah or Leanna, do you want to say anything or?
I can say something, but I'll say it's a good and a bad. ClinGen is great in that you get to work with people from all around the world. But in order to do that, sometimes you're sending emails a lot of the day. So just when all of my activities would kind of center around that, it's just a reality of working with people from all around the world. Sometimes it would be a little frustrating, but like I mentioned, there were most of the time I had many tasks to do. So you could break that up a little bit.
Fair. All right. So is there anything in particular that you'd like to highlight that you learned in this particular opportunity that you plan to take with you to your future program or job or what have you? And it can be, factual knowledge or interaction knowledge or anything like that.
I definitely am going to take a lot of the management skills with me. So be that time management of myself or having, I think I mentioned this before, a little bit of the experience with being given responsibilities, and some of that ended up being coordination. Leanna mentioned this a little bit, kind of emailing a lot of people, getting everyone on the same page. Coordination like that, it sounds like something that shouldn't be that difficult, but actually there's a lot of skills that come along that are really great to learn, and definitely something I will be taking with me to the next step. I don't think I would have learned how important coordination like that is without this stepping stone opportunity, and I'm really glad that I have it.
I think one large takeaway for me is how confident I became in the work that I was doing. A lot of my role as a gene and variant curator was to then, present my work to these conference calls of just experts on the subject. And, there I am with just, a college degree, presenting a lot of these people's livelihood work back to them. It was a lot. I grew a lot in my confidence in myself to, first of all, be able to present in front of people and not be on this call right now and be nervous. But confident in the work that I was doing, and being able to have these scientific discussions with people, and there's a really big skill that you learn and how to have productive conversation and not argument, but back and forth with people to come to at the end of the day some kind of agreement with each other. That was a big learning and takeaway for me.
I would say for me, it was kind of, again, those skills that I think will translate really well. I was able to learn how to plan, but then also be flexible, because you might plan to have exactly the amount of time you need, but you will run into problems and then you need to kind of work through. So I've had a lot of practice with problem solving. And then I think another really important life skill that I gained was knowing when to ask for help. I mean, in the beginning, you can ask all the questions that you want, but you do get to a certain point where you have your own expertise and you know how to do things, but knowing when to ask for help and what you need to come with to be helped, I think is really important.
Good one. Did you add anything, Natalie?
Yeah, I think along those lines, if all you've ever done is school, you kind of think in the mindset of, okay, I'm going to write this essay and I'm going to turn it in and I'm going to get a grade. Whereas when you go to a job, your supervisor or your colleagues or whatever are working with you and they give you feedback and you need to incorporate that feedback. It's kind of like you learn how to do iterative work and incorporate, as Rebecca was saying, like feedback and disagreements and turn them into a final product that is better than anything you could have done individually.
Excellent insights, you guys. All right, next question. What advice would you give someone who's thinking about pursuing a similar role before additional education or before moving on to something else?
I would say go for it, honestly. I think it's such a great opportunity to have in between undergrad or your higher education, especially if you're not exactly certain where you want to go. But even if you are certain, I think it would still be beneficial to have this opportunity to increase your skill sets or just learn more about what maybe working in industry more than academia might be. And I think a lot of the advice that gets thrown around is like, do research to have that on your resume. Sometimes that's easier said than done. So my advice would be, don't be afraid of, internships, dedicating your summer to working somewhere if you're an undergrad. And that can be as simple as kind of finding the email contact for something you're interested in, throwing your resume out there and asking just if they have internship opportunities. A lot of times they can kind of work with you. I think a lot of times places like having interns and kind of sharing knowledge. So just something to, consider. Definitely throw yourself out there if you want to, for sure.
And before anyone else jumps in, I will echo that. And a lot of your larger academic institutions are going to have summer undergraduate specific programs for this. So it's worth trying to maybe search on terms like that, or if there's a particular city you want to be in, or a particular university you want to work in, check them out and see if they have summer undergraduate programs, because a lot of them do. And a lot of faculty members also want to mentor you because they also want that experience on their resume. So it's mutually beneficial to everyone. So don't be afraid to look for those opportunities. Anyone else want to comment on advice?
Yeah, I will encourage. Oh, sorry, Rebecca.
No, you go ahead, Natalie.
Okay. I'll just encourage it if you're thinking of going to medical school or not sure, to do a stepping stone, make sure it's what you want to do, and it would give you time to pad your resume with publications or volunteer work, etc. It's worth it.
I was going to just say something similar, if you're not sure, similar to what both you and Hannah and Natalie are saying, if you're not sure where you want to go with your career, even if you are sure, I really kind of had an idea of what the research world would look like when I went out into it. And it ended up being a little different than what I thought, just based on my own experiences, which I thought was really valuable in helping me come to a decision of where I wanted to go career-wise.
I completely agree with all that was said. And it does seem like I knew what I wanted to do going into this stepping stone, but I will say it is okay if you have multiple stepping stones, and I kind of had that in my career path, and it saves you more time in the long run than getting halfway through a program and realizing it's not right for you. So take the time to decide now, and then you'll be really well prepared going into a program.
So just as a follow-up to that, and this is a very similar question, but worded slightly differently to see if it elicits any different response from you guys. What would you say, like, what do you see as benefits or drawbacks to not going straight through, like from your undergrad to your next, if you knew, assuming that you knew, because I know some of you didn't, assuming you knew what you wanted to do, would you still think that the stepping stone was worth it, or would you think it would be better to move straight through?
I still would think that the stepping stone is worth it. Like I intended like originally to go like straight from college to some kind of like PhD degree. And I'm glad that my life didn't work out that way. I'm glad that I had this stepping stone opportunity in between to like really see if it was right for me. So, I mean, and I'm sure that if I had gone straight through to a higher education, like I would have been happy in a different way. But, you know, personally, I'm glad that the way things worked out for myself, you know, having had this opportunity in between.
I'd say the same.
Go ahead, Natalie.
I'm so sorry. I'd just say the same. I think the only drawback I can think of is that I'm 3 years older than some of my classmates, but I'm still the average medical student age. So I wouldn't really think of that as a big drop.
Same here. I think I can just tell I know so much more than coming straight out of school. So it's like learning before you even start the learning. It like really gives you a leg up. Commenting on being a little bit older, I will say sometimes I'm several years out of school that sometimes I wish I was a little more stable at this part in life when some of my peers are, but at the same time, I'm excited to hopefully start the rest of my career.
I don't think I have much to add. I definitely agree with everything that was said before, for sure.
All right. So when did you guys realize that it was time for you to move on from your stepping stone opportunity, that you were ready to move to the next step of your career?
So for myself, before I was in the role, there were two other individuals who were in the same role as me that both kind of phased out of the role after like the 2-year mark. So personally, I kind of like set that as like, okay, I want to, and myself, I kind of work better when I have deadlines. So I was like, okay, I'm going to kind of set like the 2-year point as a deadline where like, you know, I've spent a really good amount of time in the role at that point, and I want to know, like, for myself, I want to have like the next goal for myself by that point. So that's kind of how I set it for myself. There wasn't anyone like pushing me out at that point, but there was plenty of time for me to like get comfortable in the role, start even to the point of like training some new people in the role. Like I worked with Hannah as an intern and kind of was like showing her the way that the role worked, and then felt like, you know, I had done a good amount of time, and at that point was myself ready to move out of the role.
Yeah, I'd say that just like Becky said, the 2-year span is kind of the norm in ClinGen, and I think it's a really great time span, just like Becky said, to kind of get comfortable, to learn a lot, and then have the opportunity to mentor the newer biocurators specifically for ClinGen coming in. So at the end of my time, I was really excited to kind of pass on the baton with the new team that I had a role in mentoring, which was a really great opportunity to have some mentoring experience, even at this young stage in my life still. So it just felt like the right time. I had learned what I wanted to from the role, and I really was ready to kind of get back to the wet lab. And I was so excited to pass the baton on to the new members and let them lead. So it was really great.
Then Natalie, you mentioned specifically you stayed for 3 years. So maybe could you comment on why you decided to do that, how you knew that was right for you?
Yeah, so for me, I think it had to do with when I decided I was going to do medicine for sure. I had kind of explored genetic counseling and nutrition. And so I think it was the end of my first 6 months that I decided I was going to do medicine. Then I had to take the MCAT and then apply. And so I think because of the length of the medical school application cycle, I would have been leaving the NIH a year before starting medical school. And it made more sense to me to stay at the NIH because of how happy I was there. I was starting to like reap the benefits of like being very confident in my role. That made more sense to me to stay than to start somewhere new. So that's why I ended up staying a third year.
And then Leanna, the genetic counseling application process is a very specific timed process. And you could have applied the first year after you started working with us, but you applied the second year. Do you want to say why you decided to do that?
Sure, I would love to comment on that and then also mention that Geisinger had a few GCAs recently who applied right away. So I can talk about both of those things. So I started in June of 2020 and I could have began the application process kind of in fall. So like August to December. At that point, I didn't feel like my application was very strong. So it felt like I should focus on learning the job and building up my CV. And then the next year that came around, it really did feel natural to start the process of hopefully moving on. We had 3 GCAs this year who I think knew what they wanted to do in school and therefore were able to do a little bit more of that prep work beforehand. So the job was just to help them stand out a little bit more. So they started maybe in the summer and then did that fall application cycle. So I think it just really goes to show that you should be prepared. You can move on when you're prepared. So when you're ready to apply. And then also keeping in mind that if it doesn't work out, I think you would be welcome probably to stay in a lot of these stepping stone opportunities.
Absolutely. All right, we have a question from the audience now. What specific opportunities in your role helped you to decide what you wanted to pursue, especially for the people who were not sure at the beginning?
I have 1 or 2 examples. One being that like through my role, and I kind of said this before, like part of what I got to do was present my work to like the experts in the field coming to conclusions about like these gene and variant curations. And a couple of those times I actually was able to go meet people in person. Like, for example, I worked primarily with the hearing loss group and actually was able to go meet people at Mass Eye and Ear, like in the setting of Mass Eye and Ear, and have discussion with them there. I got to do the same over at Boston Children's, which was so cool to kind of get, you know, that in person and like in more of a clinical setting experience. And then one specific opportunity that I kind of jumped on was even shadowing a physician for the day, because I was, you know, working a lot with these people online and kind of reached out being like, hey, I would love to come shadow you in clinic for a day just to see, you know, we talk a lot about like hearing loss genes, but maybe I could come see like the work that you do in the clinical setting. So that was like a huge opportunity for me to see things in the clinical setting side.
The first thing that came to mind for me as well was shadowing. I think a lot of the time we have an idea of what a career is like, but I would say the best way to know if it's right for you is to see it day to day, if you're able to. And even if you can't see people kind of in action in their work, I think there's a lot of value in, I can't remember the exact word for it, interviewing the person, asking them what they do daily, asking them what they like about their job, asking them what's difficult, you know, getting an idea of what you would be doing in each profession, I think is very helpful, and seeing the different sides of healthcare, genetics, science. There are many players in the game, and figuring out what you would be most interested in and be best at will help you, I think.
I'd say a question I found helpful to ask myself, since I was exposed to so many different careers at my stepping stone, is, do I want to do what this person does? And I think physicians specifically, I found really exciting to see physicians working at the NIH or through programs adjacent to the NIH, because I was like, oh, you can work in the clinic and do some sort of like administrative job or research job. So I think that's what sold me, was seeing the diversity of options that I could have with the career path I ended up taking.
It was a bit harder to find, specific plant genetics opportunities in ClinGen. But what I think helped me the most was trying to throw myself into as many opportunities as I could, whether that be through ClinGen or through the Broad, the specific company where I was, just because I'm a person who, like, I can't answer a question like, do I want to go into the wet lab or dry lab, until I have really hands-on experience in both of those places. So I kind of needed to that experience to answer those questions. So I'd say, if you have a similar experience, you really need that experience to answer that question, go ahead and throw yourself into whatever opportunities you can to have that experience, and figure out where you want to go.
All right, and then another question from the audience. We talked briefly about what each of your different roles were, but could you expand a little bit more about what day-to-day was like in those different roles?
As a biocurator for ClinGen, a lot of the role is reading literature in different disease areas, which is a really cool part of the job, in that I would spend some mornings reading papers and doing a curation between a specific gene and disease for a kidney disorder. And then I could spend the afternoon doing something of the same genre for a craniofacial disorder. So just very different disease scopes, but I could have both of those in the same day, and kind of compiling papers, getting really familiar with the literature, and then having the opportunity to present it in your own way to experts in the field. So that's a lot of the job, and there are some great opportunities that come from that. And again, it's a great experience to have such a wide range of disease areas that you can get familiar with.
And Becky, you of course had the same position. Would you add anything to that or bring up any other points?
Yeah, so Hannah and I worked in very the same setting, really. She pretty much touched on everything. It was a lot of like getting to work, doing a lot of literature research. We had frameworks to work on with our scoring, and then having like set times that we would have to have our work prepared to do like Zoom conferences with the expert teams to present our work. Yeah, that was pretty much our daily work.
Now, Leanna had a slightly different job as a genetic counseling assistant. So would you want to comment specifically on how that's different from what the biocurators did?
Sure. So as I mentioned, first of all, I had a split role and most of that was ClinGen. So as GCAs under Erin, we kind of all had our own curation activities that we helped to coordinate. Mine was variant pathogenicity. So kind of all of the experts in the field deciding if a specific variant or genetic change was benign, pathogenic, or somewhere in between. The interesting thing about variant pathogenicity and what we call variant curation expert panels is that there's kind of an extra long application process for them to be approved so that we maintain what we call our FDA recognition. So in my daily work, I was kind of helping VSEPs, those variant curation expert panels, throughout the application process under the neurodevelopmental space. So from defining their scope of work and typing up maybe what the genes do and looking in ClinVar to figure out how many discrepancies there are, to getting together members, organizing meetings, formatting rules, kind of everywhere across that process, helping those experts to get approved by ClinGen and then assisting in that curation that Hannah and Becky did, sustained curation after they were fully approved. I also did get to work with an external registry related to ClinGen, a patient registry. So that was focused on patient data sharing. And then in my clinical role, I assisted the genetic counselors in the clinic with phone calls, sending negative letters, things like that.
And Natalie, from the NHGRI side.
Yeah, so I would say that the program analyst position varies a lot depending on what programs you're assigned to. The majority of us will do minutes for different administrative calls, either at the NHGRI or for our programs. For ClinGen, I did a lot of presentation making for my program director. Basically, there's a lot of communication with other programs or organizations where you basically present to them what ClinGen does and whether they want to collaborate with ClinGen or not. And so that involved putting together PowerPoints, making some fun slides about how to represent all the information about the program, which I really enjoyed. For the ethical, legal, and social implications research program, I did some synthesis work. We wanted to do a paper on legal issues surrounding use of DNA. And so I worked with somebody to do a literature review on that. And yeah, you get a lot of opportunities to present papers at different conferences. NHGRI itself has a conference, I think, once a year. So it's a good experience for learning to communicate with people and how to present information in different ways.
Excellent. And then another question from the audience. Did you learn about any careers that you weren't previously aware of in your role?
I actually got to spend a lot of time chatting with genetic counselors, which I didn't really know much about as a career. I, did get to consider that when I was trying to decide like where I wanted to go in my own career as an opportunity. So that was probably one of like the major careers that I didn't have much experience with in the past.
Probably nearly all of them, in the sense that like I didn't know genetic counselors, I didn't know about physician's assistants, I didn't know about like program directors specifically at the NIH. I knew that grant writers were a thing, but I didn't know how you like make that a career or how you get there. So yeah.
Any others anyone can think of?
I would say I got to get a little bit more familiar with project management and also software development.
Oh, great one.
Is really going hand in hand with genetics and science in general. It was a great skill to see.
And we did actually have software developers on our last career panel. So if you didn't check that one out, you should check that one out. So as Leanna mentioned, those are also careers that are adjacent to genetics that you might explore if you're not sure you want to go into clinical rep. All right. Well, is there anything that you would suggest for those considering applying to such a stepping stone career? How can they make their resumes, presumably, maybe if these people are in undergrad right now, thinking of going on to next, or really anyone, how can they make their resume stand out when trying to apply for these jobs that we know many people are applying for?
I would maybe just suggest like highlighting what kind of research opportunities you got to do. If it's an undergrad setting, I, tried to highlight a lot of like the lab work that I was involved in. Since I was working like a biocuration role, tried to highlight a lot of like the like biochemistry work that I was involved in. To kind of match what I was applying towards.
I would also say to highlight any experience that you have in a team setting. A lot of the work, I'm talking specifically from a ClinGen background, but a lot of the work is kind of managing your time, but also interacting with people either on the same team as you within ClinGen, or again, those clinicians and physicians that you're meeting with. So communication is really, really important. Presenting science clearly is really, really important. So anything that you have concerning team management skills or presentation skills, definitely highlight something like that.
You wanted to add something, Leanna?
Yes. First, I want to say that applying to jobs can be a lot of work. So take this advice to the degree that you can. But I think you can really go far by showing your genuine interest in a position and how you feel like it could help you on your path forward in a profession. And even if you're uncertain of what you want to do, I think it is perfectly acceptable to say that you want to explore XYZ positions, which you'd be able to in this position, and how you think that that position can help you moving forward. There's something to be said about doing your research, and if there's maybe an optional cover letter, writing the cover letter and writing about the company, the position, and how it kind of fits into what you see for your future.
As someone who reads all of these applications, I second that 100%. Your resume is often in a pile with many, many other people who have very similar qualifications as you do. So anything that you can do to get me to notice your application more is better. And that includes a cover letter, even if I didn't ask for one, but especially if I did ask for one. And that gives me a sense of your writing style, how good you are at communicating. And if you've done any additional research, like Leanna suggested, it shows me that you're interested in the position. And also just small things make a big difference. Proofreading your resume is a #1 biggie. If I feel like you didn't even take the time to proofread your resume, it makes me wonder, are you going to do a good job if you didn't even take the time to make sure you didn't have typos in your resume? So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. Natalie, did you want to add anything else to that?
Nope, just second everything everyone has shared.
Awesome. And then last quick question, are there other common stepping stones for your career path? Like, for example, Becky, in the nursing field, any of your colleagues, what kind of things did they do before they got to nursing? Did they go straight through, or are there other things people could be thinking about?
In nursing, it is like very much a mixed bag because you can do undergraduate degree with nursing. So I have a fair amount of coworkers who kind of knew early, I guess high school age, that that's what they wanted to do. But I do work with a lot of people who nursing is not a first career. But it's so variable kind of what they did before that. But a lot of my coworkers were in some type of other like scientific fields prior to nursing. But I think it also is helpful because a lot of like my undergraduate work and classes that I took, I could use towards my application, like to meet the criteria for nursing school. But what was great about working with ClinGen is because I had a lot of time outside of work, like on my evenings to take more classes and work on my resume for nursing school. So it's all kind of a mix. I can't say that, like I noticed a lot of people that I work with having like one type of career before nursing, very variable.
And then Leanna, you mentioned a lot of people interested in genetic counseling do genetic counseling assistant positions, but can you think of any others that people may do as well?
I think specifically in Geisinger, you can be just a general research assistant and get a lot of the same opportunities and benefits that the specific GCAs get. So even if you're in kind of a more general role, but you're with a bigger institution, I would encourage you reaching out to see if there are any connections in the institution, just opportunities that you might be able to get that way. Otherwise, I've been meeting a lot of students in the interview process and everything, and there are definitely some second career people as well. Interestingly, I've met a lot of teachers. So I think teaching goes really well with genetic counseling, just the way you have to present the information. So I don't think you need to do the exact genetic counseling assistant path forward.
Mm-hmm. And Natalie, what do you notice in your classmates? What were they doing before going to medical school?
Just anecdotally, I think scribing is a big one. That's where you like follow the doctor and write notes for them. A lot of people did research during their time off. And I would say for me, I had already done a lot of research, so I was looking for something a bit different. And yeah, there are second career people. So I said, I'm older than some of my classmates, but there are definitely a lot of classmates that are older than I am. People who did like administrative jobs in the past and are in medical school now.
Okay. And Hannah, jobs before going into PhD programs, do you think of any others?
I think that the more standard, lab tech or associate position is something that's a big one as well at the Broad, at the larger company. That's a very standard position. The research associate position in a more wet lab space is a very similar idea. It can last for maybe 2 years. You get a lot of skills, and it's specifically designed for that space between undergrad and going on to the next step.
All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen again very quickly just to provide some wrap-up information. So this was recorded. The recording of this panel will be posted on our website by Monday, and this is where you can find it if you click on this button from our home screen. You can also follow us on Twitter for other announcements. And then we will be sending out a post-series survey just to let us know if you enjoyed this, if this helped you in any way, should we do this again next year, etc. So if you could take a few moments to fill that out, that would be great. I think Jules may have put it in the chat, but we'll also be sending it to you via email. I do just want to once again thank our panelists. It was so great to see you all again. We had wonderful insight. I'm so proud of all of you. And thank you for giving us your time today.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
having me.